how much do you think running a brand campaign and getting those conversions coming through on brand terms, how much of those conversions are being used account level? So what I mean by that is Google seeing, okay, you've had 10 or 15 or 30 conversions through the brand campaign. We're going to use those conversions as a signal for future conversions in other campaigns. Like,
Yeah.
because I always think there are account level signals. And if you can
Mhm.
get conversions, you're building that overall account data up.
Yeah.
Google's looking at that and saying, okay, well, this guy converted, this girl converted. I know similar people like that. I'm going to advertise to people with similar browsing habits, similar search terms, similar websites they visited, and hopefully they'll convert. So, what's your thoughts on account level conversions through brand campaigns? Thanks, brother.
But but yeah, I think if you're moving from heavier outerwear, fall, that's going to be higher average order value than if it's tank top or shorts. That it's just more material. So I think that's
Mm.
definitely one thing that might have just been unlucky on your end when they've taken you, and it's like almost this transitional between fall or colder weather into hotter. But I
Mm.
mean, one way to look at that would probably just go back either on their Shopify or backend and just look at the same months but year over year, and see how if there's that drop off between hotter months versus colder. But with something like Performance Max, I do tend to want to disable all auto apply recommendations and whatever it may be, but I'll really like leave like maybe a buffer period of 2 to 3 weeks where I'm not doing anything other than just observing it and kind of looking and seeing more of the back data of the account, just because
Mm.
when you have something that's so automated like Performance Max and it's opaque, you don't really understand what's driving it, all you see are conversion value and cost, then that becomes really hard for us to do anything other than maybe observe it and see, okay, this is how it reacted to this target ROAS change, or this is how it reacted to this. So maybe that also did something. I've seen a lot of accounts that have Performance Max end up just turning on auto apply recommendations, and steadily between 6 months to a year, I've seen like steady growth, with a high return on ad spend. And once I turn something like that off because of the nature of Performance Max, it'll go down. So it might have been
Mm.
the perfect storm or both of those things happen. But I mean, you're trying to bring it to a more manual campaign, so that's always a good thing, in my opinion, because you don't want to trade, you know, like basically control for, just conversions, or you don't know how you get those conversions. So I understand your thought process.
About like, well, three things. I should write, make a note, but like three things, like the fashion niche, because this is all fashion. This is like tops and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Number two is like, how do you scale your e-commerce clients? And number three is, should we like we as like Google Ads account managers, we always say don't use broad match,
Mm-hmm.
don't use auto apply recommendations, don't use smart campaigns, things like that. But who's said this? Like, I mean, maybe it's
Yeah,
proven, you know what I mean? But
I
maybe it's
know.
proven over time. But like,
Mm-hmm.
what if we do that? What if we use a smart campaign? Can we
Mm-hmm.
see results? What if we run a broad match campaign? What if we leave everything auto apply? You know, what's your thoughts on all
Yeah.
that?
No, that's great question, and I hope this does make a video or episode, because this is real life questions, and I struggle with the same thing, but over the years, what I've noticed is, if the account has data and favorable data in the last 30, 60, 90, 180, year to date, 365, all of those, and they have auto apply recommendations on, and I could see the auto apply recommendations on has been on the whole time. What my goal is to perhaps keep an eye on that, but that's not my first go-to as a change if I'm looking to scale something that's already profitable and getting adequate volume in conversions and conversion value. My first thing would be less, because there are so many tiers of different changes that we could do that can be a big thing. If a bid strategy change is a huge thing, even if you're going from conversion value to return on ad spend, that could flip the whole account or campaign upside down. So I tend not to do that. What I'll do is in aggregate, I'll look at either locations. If I feel like there's positive data there, I might do some exclusions, really trim the fat on a very small tiered level. And I think that's kind of where I would fall short too, is I think that to scale, forward, I'm always thinking I got to do more. But it's really the opposite. To get to the return on ad spend from 2 to 4. It's not changing the whole bid strategy or maybe even doing auto apply recommendations, turning them off, even though I do the same thing, especially if it's a brand new account that has not gotten any conversions or conversion value. That's the first thing that I'll do. But if it's an account that I'm taking on that has that auto apply recommendation on, first I'm observing and seeing what happens if I, just run it without any changes, and I'll get with the client and ask them straight up because they know the business. I'd be like, what are your lowest peaks when it comes to, in this case, fashion niche? Because if you're in fashion, it doesn't matter what you sell or how much of it you sell. There's going to be peaks and valleys, and that goes for almost every business. So I'll ask them straight up, and then I'll go in the data and see if that whatever anecdote they tell me that these are our lowest months, these are our highest months, if that actually reconciles behind their Shopify or behind their Google Ads and conversion value. Because sometimes a business owner doesn't know, and me taking their word for it, and I'm like, okay, scaling some budget down, when in reality Shopify and Google Ads is saying, no, this is actually the peak account or the peak campaign time that we should spend more. Then I'm shooting myself in the foot without doing my own due diligence. So I think one is I would be very weary with how auto apply recommendations looked before I've gotten there. And this is, making sure obviously we have all the conversion values up to par. And if it is up to par, I would look and see, okay, auto apply recommendations has literally been on since the last 2 years. And the reason why I think that could be very detrimental is Google is just so used to that setting, and all of the data is flowing through and is flowing through smooth. And if we were to take one of those things out, to me, it's too big of a risk. I almost put that up there with changing a bid strategy. So I would do other things, maybe search term cleanup, maybe adding another asset group. That's one thing with the new age of Performance Max that I don't do enough is I have one catch-all campaign, but I've seen recently me going through different collections. Okay, this is a bag asset group. This is a hat asset group. I go through one of them I made like 10 asset groups, and it's working well because the more data that you feed it, the better it is. So that's perhaps another thing that you could do that's maybe low impact. If Google sees that new asset group not assimilate with the other asset groups that are working well, then obviously the ones that are working well will still show, because that's the only good thing about Performance Max is reading the data of what's converting and pushing those products. So I think it is, it's such a slippery slope, but I wouldn't, maybe you should just observe, with auto apply recommendations on and see how that goes.
There is a lot. There's a lot of good stuff in there, to be honest. And I was listening. I was making notes because I've got a few questions I want to ask you. And
Yeah.
this could, I mean, if you want to put this out, or we just trim the first bit where it's a little bit more data sharing and personalized, we can put this one out, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I think this is a very real episode. It's really, really cool. But the thing is that, for me, the best way I can describe it is I'm a consumer of knowledge in terms of Google Ads, right? So I don't just watch and listen to us. I listen to many different podcasts and YouTube channels that are out there. And I kind of put it to the same example of I watch Tiger Woods, I watch Rory McIlroy, I watch Bryson DeChambeau, I watch all these different golfers and how they hit the club and how they do their swing. Everyone's got their own technique. And if you try and emulate that, you're copying like two or three or four or five different guys.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think you have to go with what's natural for you and your body, because watching like a Rory McIlroy try and swing a golf club like a Bryson DeChambeau is going to be so different and unnatural to him. So he's got his own swing. Everybody's got their own swing. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking maybe it's the same for Google Ads. Like I'm
Hmm.
consuming all of this different knowledge of different like market leaders in the space and listening to, okay, this guy's using like a low target return on ad spend strategy. This
Yeah.
guy is using maximize clicks. This guy's, only using broad match. This guy's only using phrase, all these different things. And I'm trying to emulate them, but
Hmm.
maybe I kind of need to bring it back and say, okay, what am I seeing in my accounts? What is working in my accounts? What do I see working for me? Rather than trying to fit the mold of what's cool and trendy and hip at the moment from other people, actually, what's working for me? So for me, I found that maximize conversions across a lot of my accounts is a theme. It's working quite well, as is manual bidding.
Hmm.
So maybe that's something that I need to take a mental note of and kind of listen to myself a little bit more and say, okay, well, that's great. It's working for these guys, it's working for those guys, but what's working for me? And maybe I need to double down on that. So the question I've got is at the moment, like, I've got three questions.
Hmm.
I don't know where to start. I'm going to start with the first one that you said was when you take on an account for the first 2 or 3 weeks, you're just observing then. You're not really
Hmm.
making too many changes. You're just seeing, like, okay, this is the natural flow of the account, of the campaigns before I make any changes. You're asking the client questions. You're checking in with the client saying, okay, what is the lowest like return on ad spend you can go and still make profit? And what type of questions are you asking? And how does
Yeah.
that first 2 to 3 weeks look like?
Yeah. And to add on to your point, I think that's a great point, where you have to do what works for you. Going with what you just said with the golf analogy, it's sometimes Scotty Scheffler is going to drag his feet whenever he tees off, or Bryson DeChambeau is a beast. Like he's ripped. Like we're not going to have that power. We're not going to have those different quirks. Maybe our limbs are different. So I think it's really, and to say that this works is it's tough because it only works for that period of time, for that budget, for that specific competitor in that space. It's so specific that I think that every single account, every single client is going to be totally different. So I think the principles remain the same. And the principles for me would be, like we discussed, making sure that I am just observing in the first 2, 3 weeks. Sometimes it's even, I'm not gonna lie to you, sometimes it's even a month. I'm just watching, because we're paid to manage Google Ads, not change the account. So management to me, it's like if you're a hedge fund manager. Sometimes you just have to watch it rise and maybe tweak, maybe take one out. It's not really about the volume of what I do. It's more so of the data. But one thing that will be forever, true is the budget spending. That's the big thing that I've come across is I have to know if the budget is spending the way that it should, because if it's not, then there's a couple yellow, orange, red flags perhaps that is causing that. And one of it is, for me, for my experience only, it could be different, is if I'm trying to transition a client into return on ad spend, even if they have adequate conversion volume or value, it does not necessarily mean it's going to work. And that's the biggest, where we've been always taught, okay, it has 20 or 30 conversions, put on return on ad spend. It says it on optimize, your optimized score will increase. For me, I would rather see that on max conversion value or manual CPC or even max clicks for at least 2 months and then make that decision. So one of the
Wow.
things to ask the clients is, like I said before, what are your low months? What are your high months? I'll reconcile that. And this is kind of the grunt work that I have to do it, and I should do it more, where I'm actually looking at the data itself instead of creating all these best practices in my head, experiences, and just doing that. Because, like we said before, it's bespoke for every client, every situation, every budget. So I'm looking back and seeing, is the budget spending? If it's not spending, why? When did it spend? When was the last budget change? I'll look at those things. When is the last bid strategy change? Is that adequate? 30, 60, 90 days? And how did that reflect in that period of that time. And one thing that I would ask the client, especially since we were discussing e-commerce, is a lot of the Google Merchant Center, especially for doing Performance Max, is hinged upon, do we have all these qualifiers, these UPCs, these MPNs, these product category, the taxonomy, all these little small little things that we don't like to do. But if we're in e-commerce, where shopping is primarily one good way to get impressions, clicks, and conversions, we have to get them done. And more likely than not, if it's an e-commerce company, it's there's going to be missing data. There's not going to be colors. It's not even going to say what condition the item is. If you don't even have a condition that says new, a lot of the times they don't have that filled out. So like those things, the small things are what's going to help you just kind of like hold off from making the big changes, because that you're one big change away from kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and just messing up the whole account. And so for me, it's really those small things that I could do a lot of work on. That's not gonna negatively impact an account of scale, putting the color, putting the sizing, putting the things like that is kind of what I would focus on and maybe ask questions about.
So how do you use target return on ad spend as a bidding strategy? Do you use it often? How do you use it? Because there's a lot of talk these days about how Google is basically bidding really aggressive when it's on a low target return on ad spend goal. So if you've got
Yeah.
it set to say 40%, 80%, 100%, something like that, Google says, okay, I can get you that goal really easy. And you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to get you a 300% return, 400, 500% return. And I've seen that happen and I've tested this and
Mhm.
it does work.
Yeah.
But the problem is how do you scale that? Because I feel like, okay, I can put a target return on ad spend of 40%. Well, how do I scale that? I can't
Right.
go any lower because I guess I could go down to 10%, but what's going to happen there? Like you're going
Yeah.
backwards almost because it's not a goal. It's not like a ROAS goal. It's like a bidding strategy. It's like
Mhm.
how aggressive you want to bid or not. Whereas if you bid 500% as a goal, then maybe you're bidding a lot less because Google needs the funds to, okay, well, you want me to achieve 500%. I've got to be careful who I show the ads to here, so I need to be more delicate with the budget that I'm going to spend because, okay, that guy not going to convert for that. This guy might do. So
Mhm.
it's a bit more of a foot off the gas a little bit kind of bidding strategy. So do you still use target return on ad spend in the traditional sense where 2 months, 3 months, maybe 6 months down the line, you've got 30 to 50 conversions each and every month, and you say, okay, we're getting a 4-to-1, a 400% return on ad spend. The client wants six.
Mhm.
What do you do? How are you using that?
Yeah. So I use target return on ad spend specifically if it's a client that I've kind of managed for a long period of time, where I've perhaps done max conversion value or max conversions, whatever it is, or max clicks, manual CPC, and seen that steady ROAS of at least 2 to 3 months. That's for me the biggest like marker of is the longevity and the consistency, because I primarily work in e-commerce, and like we said before, there's going to be peaks and valleys. And for us to have a return on ad spend and then immediately freak out the next month and lower it because why? It's not your fault. That's one thing I want to tell, PPC managers. It's not always your fault that Google Ads stops working. There is seasonality, there is budget constraints, there's competitive external factors that's factoring this in. Your return on ad spend isn't all because of what you've done as a Google Ads manager. So for me, I do use a lot more max conversion value, because essentially it is, if you were to set a target return on ad spend below your actual return on ad spend, I think that's kind of what is max conversions and max conversion value. That's kind of the equivalent of it, just kind of in an upgraded sense, where it's looking beyond, okay, you can only, if you have a budget, you could automatically see how much you could spend each day, because it'll work backwards between your return on ad spend goal and how much you can spend to get that goal. And sometimes that just really pigeonholes us, where max conversion value and max conversions, I feel like you have a little bit more leeway. You can do your optimizations and not worry about return on ad spend not hitting or hitting, because in my opinion, I've never seen, an account within 6 7 months continually increase the return on ad spend, increase. There's always that max capacity, right? Where it's going to be diminishing returns where you can't go higher than that because it's either not spending enough or you're just not, if you go higher than that, you're going to basically want one click and then get a conversion, or get the right conversion value. So I think it's really important to one, only do it if you see a step ladder approach of like increase in return on ad spend. And that's consistent between 2 to 3 months. And sometimes I catch myself wanting to do it earlier. I'm like, okay, this is a month, increase like that. But even if it's going up, that could be a false positive, what I'm saying? Like, where that could be attributed to something that's beyond what you're doing. Maybe they increased their Facebook meta ads and one video is going crazy, or maybe UGC on TikTok went crazy and there's virality for 2 to 3 days. So for me, it's just so important to start with something that's controllable or less limiting, like maybe even manual CPC, max clicks, max conversion value conversions, then really doing TROAS, because I think TROAS pigeonhole you more than, those other strategies.
It's really good answer, by the way, but it's interesting because recently I'm moving away from Performance Max, and I'm surprised how, like, I'm going back to my roots almost. I'm going standard shopping, I'm going
Mm,
manual bidding, and I'm seeing a lot more results because of all that. But I feel like sometimes as account managers, we can get overwhelmed. And I feel like a lot of clients put the blame on us when things go wrong. And like
yeah.
you said, I feel like I need to hear this at the moment because I've got 2 or 3 clients where, I lost one today, like I said. Always hurts to lose a client, of course. I know I'll bounce back. In fact, I had a very good, promising conversation with someone today. So that could replace that client. So we'll see what happens with that. It's always a positive.
Mm,
But the point is that, clients are saying to me, okay, we want to scale to that next level. Why aren't we seeing the results? Why have results stopped and halted? Can you give us an explanation? And
yeah.
sometimes there's not always an explanation to give. It could just be, like you said, competitive market, seasonality. I'm not a wizard. I'm not a magician. You're a wizard, Harry. I'm not like I'm not a magician,
Mm,
right? If it was up to me, every single one of my clients would get a million phone calls, a million leads, a million sales on a daily basis, and my hair would grow back and I would be so much less stressed, right? But
yeah.
this is the thing, is that it's not all so simple. It's not always down to Google Ads. It's not always down to what you're seeing inside the account. Competitive market, pricing, brand, reputation, reviews, seasonality. There's just so many different factors that play a role, and I feel like we kind of, get given a bit of a bad hand sometimes. So, one thing I wanted to ask, because the clients that I'm speaking about are all in the same niche. It's a niche that
Mm,
you're very familiar with.
mm.
How hard is the fashion niche, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's weird, because we had some show notes talking about that in the future, and I was looking at it, and I was just kind of like, mulling it over and looking at my clients, and I would say almost all my clients, except for two, are in the fashion niche. You know, in a sense, I have two that are in accessories, but like leather goods accessories, but is it hard? Yeah. It's very difficult, especially when you have clients that maybe don't understand the patterns of what they're selling, or perhaps their best sellers and why. It's easy to look and see why there's a best, or like what the best seller is. But why is that the best seller? You just can't tell me that that's the best seller. You not have a reasoning. Is the quality better? Is this exploitative type of demographic that you've seen call you multiple times, and you know that it's a suburban wife that's 30, between 30 to 40? There needs to be explicit information from the client that provides you not only this is the best seller, but this is why this is the best seller. And then you could reverse engineer that through search ads or manual CPC or, search term targeting. But I think that's the biggest thing is we're just given information, huge catalogs at a time and they say in the clothing niche, apparel niche, go for it, spend the money. So I think that's one reason why it's so difficult, and also establishing the best sellers whilst going after all the other things in their catalogs that aren't working. It's like they want you to accentuate the positive, the bestsellers, but also bring up these sales that have never sold, these apparel, these shoes never sold before, so why would it sell with me? So I think it is very difficult, and I think you have to look at it almost like patience, and it's better if you have some type of experience in that specific niche. Like for me, I've said this a couple times, but my entry to Google Ads, e-commerce in general, was me thrifting and selling shoes, sneakers like Jordan. So I understand when someone is going to put a manufacturer part number in a Google search, and put like a specific color. I understand that color is such a high qualifier within the clothing brand. If I'm looking for color, I'm ready to pull the trigger, So those small things, of like little tidbits of how someone is going to search. If you have primary experience in that specific clothing niche, or even if you're interested, I have a golf client. Like I'm super interested in how that makes. For y'all listening on Spotify, Ryan is an avid golfer, and he's shaking his head no. He's disappointed. But yeah, I mean those small things where you have to kind of go high fun. You have to have every single angle. That's one thing I could say. Brand, low funnel, ready to purchase, mid funnel, and high funnel. And just see. You have to test. That's like Google Ads. You have to test within the budget and see if you're hitting all those funnels, which ones you could get the best for that budget for that client.
Do you run brand campaigns for your fashion clients?
That's a good question. So it depends.
In fact, let me ask a bigger question for you, if you don't mind. What's your account structure like for some of these fashion clients? I know you're a big PMAX guy. I'm wondering, do you run search campaigns for them as well? Brand campaigns? How's that look?
Okay, so
and also one more. Sorry, one more. What's the segmentation look like? Are you doing high margin, low margin bestsellers, low sellers? Well, not even ad groups, but more like campaigns. Because I'm a big fan of bestsellers. So if I've got an account where we've got historical conversion data, and say 10 of these products are the best sellers, like 15 conversions, great. Return on ad spend is like 20-1, fantastic. Let me pull all the other products out and leave one bestsellers campaign with these 15 products and give it a sole budget, right? So I like to do that a lot. But I know there's search query sculpting where you'll have what you was talking about. You'll have like a catch-all campaign. You'll have product specific, which would be something like Nike Air Jordans 10 or whatever it would be. And then you've got like more of like a brand. So like, Nike Air Jordan. So you've got a catch-all for like things like, men's shoes, men's trainers, men's sneakers. You've got your product specific or your branded one, which will be like Nike Air Jordans. But then you've got your product specific, which is like red Nike Air Jordans, like 11s or something like that. So there's many different ways of segmentation. What's your account structure look like? PMAX, standard shopping, bestsellers, the whole thing, brand campaigns.
Yeah, for sure. So like one, if it's an account that I need to scale, that I've seen conversions file in, and whatever account that they have, if they don't have a performance max campaign, I'll put one up even for $5 a day. That's just kind of my remarketing, and of course what you could see from that potentially is steal from other campaigns, but that's, in my opinion, that's invaluable, especially at $5 a day, $10 a day, whatever it may be. So I would add that on. But yeah, if it's a brand new account, we haven't done anything, my structure would be Performance Max at the lowest budget that you have, maybe 5 to 10% of all of the budget, monthly budget, as the remarketing agent. And make sure that you fill out, the asset groups. I wouldn't do a feed only, because I would actually do a manual, shopping campaign, just targeting bestsellers. I think that's kind of a good place to start. Target the best sellers. You might see brand search terms in that manual shopping campaign. Keep that in there. I would keep that in there for now. But for the search ad, you asked me, would I do a brand search campaign? And, yes, initially I would, and I would see if I could get a conversion, multiple conversions, under about $1,000 spend on that. And if I can't, I'm switching immediately to high funnel because there's probably a lot of different reasons why you're not getting conversions on your brand search campaign. One reason might be if you're cannibalizing, if your client is on Meta, on TikTok, on all these different eBay. I have clients on eBay and they're selling brand new products on eBay and they're advertising either on those platforms and it's showing up on Google. And that perhaps is the reason why your brand search terms aren't converting because you're cannibalizing elsewhere. But if you don't have that, I would do a low budget and see if it converts with, roughly around $1,000 spend or low or whatever the percentage would be. I usually would do like 30-40% of perhaps the full budget, just because a brand search campaign is important. And I hear a lot of people say this: if you're trying to defend, your market share, if you have Amazon will, I've had clients literally their brand name is on Amazon Google Ads, and they're, so whatever XYZ golf, if I search that, it should just be our stuff, but Amazon is on a Google Ads showing that same type of product, not that product, same type of product, and you could click through to have endless, options. So I think it's important to defend when you're doing brand search campaigns, but don't be stuck on that. You know what? Your job is to find new people for Google Ads, not just people that already understand the brand. If there was none of that going on, no one trying to steal our brand search terms on Google Ads through actual Google Ads, I wouldn't even do a brand search campaign. I would just go high funnel, whatever I see on the product pages, extrapolate that and create, a high funnel search campaign. For clothing, it's really valuable for me to have at least 3 search terms. Whatever high funnel is, just 3 search terms, preferably either, I'll do another example. I have a steel toe workwear client, steel toe, boots, steel toe men boots, mock toe men's boots, or composite, all these different qualifiers. And even if you could get color in there or material, that would be a good structure. So to wrap it up for this question, Performance Max campaign is the remarketing campaign. Brand search campaign, if you are seeing pressure from other, competitors or Amazon on your specific brand search term and they're running actual Google Ads, yes, I would do brand search campaign, but limit that and see if there's conversions. If there's not conversions over, I would say like $800, $1,000 in spend, that's a good amount of money to conclude that brand search campaign if it's not working. There's no use for you to continue on. If you spend $1,000 and you keep seeing your name clicked, that's crazy. Like if no one's buying on that, that means you're either getting cannibalized or you should just move on to something high funnel. And then I would do more of the high funnel 2 to 3 search terms with qualifiers along with the shopping campaign.
This is interesting because, one of my clients, great website, great brand, and we're going to wrap this up soon anyway. I'm not going to keep you for too much longer, but the thing is that they have so many copycat websites out there, people stealing their images and their products and selling them on scam websites. So not scam websites, they'll create a copy of their website, put it up and start selling products because they know it's going to sell. The client of mine is aware of that, and I've tried to advise them on what I would do, but I think over in the States there's different laws, and over here it's like plagiarism and stuff, and we can get sites taken down and things like that. Over there I think it's a bit more like, what can we do about it? It's just one of those things. So I'm not sure. But the thing is how many more sales would we be getting if they didn't exist? And I think probably a lot more, because they're stealing the images, they're stealing the products. It's so frustrating. And I think from that aspect, for me, it's a little bit of an uphill battle. With that being said, I really like some of the ideas that you had that I've not even thought about. Like I've never really thought about running a PMax with a well as a remarketing agent, yeah. But I like something when you was talking. I like the idea of doing like a performance max campaign, but excluding the feed for an e-commerce client because I've already got standard shopping running, so it's not going to clash. It's not going to
Mm-hmm.
fight with one another. And try running that and see the results because that sounds interesting. And a couple more questions and then we'll
Mm-hmm.
wrap up. But what I was going to say to you is, how much do you think running a brand campaign and getting those conversions coming through on brand terms, how much of those conversions are being used account level? So what I mean by that is Google's seeing, okay, you've had 10 or 15 or 30 conversions through the brand campaign. We're going to use those conversions as a signal for future conversions in other campaigns. Like,
Yeah.
because I always think there are account level signals. And if you can
Mm-hmm.
get conversions, you're building that overall account data up.
Yeah.
Google's looking at that and saying, okay, well, this guy converted, this girl converted. I know similar people like that. I'm going to advertise to people with similar browsing habits, similar search terms, similar websites they visited, and hopefully they'll convert. So, what's your thoughts on account level conversions through brand campaigns, and how
Yeah.
much
And
of a
that's
signal does it use? Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, and that's like one of the basic things that Performance Max talks about, right? Where it doesn't say, oh, if you're running a high funnel search campaign or you're running a brand, can't distinguish that. A conversion by osmosis, if you have a search campaign in conjunction with Performance Max, it doesn't matter what type of campaign it is. It could be brand, it could be actually high funnel. It sees that conversion. It's going to take those same signals, the same process that those users got, even if it's high funnel versus brand search campaign, and it's going to use those same signals for Performance Max, and that's in Google's documents on their website. So I think it is very important, to continue on with brand search campaign. But the big thing for me is if each month, uh, like I am basically resting on my laurels because of a brand search campaign instead of really continuing on to try to unlock a high funnel campaign, then that's where it could kind of feel like the PPC manager might, I wouldn't say be taking advantage of the statistics, but more so saying, look what I did. I am the very first person to come up to a client and be like, yo, this is the brand search campaign did 6 ROAS, but that's the brand search campaign. So what we are trying now is this is high funnel, this is mid funnel, that. So I think it is good for sure to kind of prime the engine with a brand search campaign, because I don't think a Performance Max campaign or any other, like you said, account level, I think by osmosis there is kind of that spread, but do we stick to that? I wouldn't, like I would continue on to optimize high funnel, test high funnel, mid funnel, whatever it may be. So yeah, I do. I think you're right for sure.
How often, like, I've never gone into an account and just tagged on like bid more efficiently with target ROAS.
Mm,
Have you ever done that? Have you ever gone in and say, you know what, I want to see how it's going to perform? Because like my thinking is that I'm the account man. It's a, you know, what's it like? I'm very um, someone's paying me to do the job. I feel like I should be doing the job. I feel like I should be in control. That's not the way Google's kind of moving these days. Google's moving to more of the smart bidding, automated campaign types with, performance max, demand gen, things like that. So at what point do we say, well, I need to be the account manager. I need to have manual this and manual that
mhm.
versus, well, you know what? It's a smart bidding strategy, an automated bidding strategy for a smart campaign like Performance Max or Demand Gen. Let me try and turn on bid more efficiently with return on ad spend because it's all algorithms. It's all work.
Mhm.
It's all AI. It's all working together. I don't know if there's a question in there, but like, have you ever turned
Yeah.
on bid more efficiently with TCPA or target ROAS or anything?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have, I've tested both. And, for me, I don't understand, to be honest, other than the data that I get once I either turn it on or turn it off. But, for max conversion value, I think there's one where it says you could bid more efficiently with max conversion value. I don't do the ones where it's like set the ROAS or set the whatever,
Mm.
but like just bid more efficiently. I would do that just because I feel like essentially that's kind of like turning on, optimize for best ads. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As much as we want to have control, or we have a specific, vision of how a Google Ads manager should act inside the account, at the end of it all, it's Google Ads in their way, and what's trending nowadays is, like we've said before, sometimes you can't even see which search term got the conversion. It's so opaque now compared to what it was before, where we're kind of being forced in a box to kind of like acquiesce and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to click automatically create, assets or final URLs, and test it. And that's why I think, beyond what we're talking about right now, is having a change log is so invaluable,
Mm.
because I can go back and say, okay, this is, I waited 2 months before I made this change of either turning off or turning on bid more efficiently, TROAS, or max conversion value, max conversions. And this was the result. Granted, there's going to be deviations there because of things externally like seasonality, but this is what I see in Google Ads, and this is what happens after. So, for me, I try everything I can inside the account. If it's manual, if it's, automated. Sometimes I keep final URL assets on, create final URL assets. And sometimes for me, it works because it's like, okay, I've gotten this return on ad spend in the last 2 months. What if I were to just turn this on and see? It's kind of like expanding to search partners after you've really done your due diligence, and you're just going to a broader place. And broader doesn't necessarily mean good, but it might. You know what I'm saying? It could. So I think it's just really important. That's why we do this podcast, because me and Ryan don't have all the answers. We only have real time data that we could go by. And sometimes that data is going to look skewed if we don't give it enough time to digest, from a month point of view, 2 months, 3 months, whatever that is.
I think that's one of the main things with me is that, I'm living in the olden times. I mean, I'm dressed like a 1950s business right now. Um, and this is the thing is that I love control. I love to
Yeah.
set the bids. I love to manage the campaigns, but I
Mhm.
feel at some point I'm clashing with Google. The direction they're taking is automated, is AI, is this, that, and the other. I had a really good chat the other day with someone who still believes in manual and standard shopping and search
Mm.
campaigns. And I think it still works. It can work
Yeah.
because it is working in some of my client accounts as well. No two accounts are the same, which is strange. So I think it is very bespoke and very particular between each business. So it's very difficult to replicate. And I'm learning that. And that's probably why scaling is so difficult because it's not a clear path. It's not, okay, you need to do this to get that, to do this to get that.
Mhm.
Every account is different. Every business is different. So there's no clear path. And I think we all talk about how do you scale up? How do you can, and that's the true challenge. I don't think there is such a thing as scaling. There's improvement, there's long-term improvement and optimizations, sustainability and growth, month-on-month growth you can get. But that
Mhm.
depends on budget increases, that depends on market share, competitors, pricing, reviews, everything we talk about in this podcast. So yeah, a bit of a rant from me. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
wrap it up. Final question from me because I know this was a bit
Yeah.
of a random episode. We didn't plan for this. It was just me
No.
speaking to you and asking you a ton of questions. But I'm curious because how often are you in Shopify versus Google Ads? Because recently I've been looking more back end rather than in Google Ads because as we know, Google's pretty bad at attributing data and conversions. If you're looking in the back end, like I've got a client who I look in the back end and I created this campaign and it was up like 67% sales for this product since I created the campaign. But in Google Ads, no conversions for this campaign, no
Yeah.
conversions. But I'm looking at the back end of Shopify and it's saying, oh, well, there's a 67% increase in sales for this product compared to the previous month. Is that a coincidence or is that a direct result of me creating this campaign, but Google's really bad at I can't say that word, attribution and attributing conversions to the campaign? So take it away. What do you think?
Yeah. No, initially I'm always in the Shopify account a lot. I'm downloading, exporting a lot of the product analysis of, 6 months, 3 months, year to date, and just uploading that on ChatGPT. And I just asked ChatGPT a very generic question. I'm like, what patterns do you see with these specific products? And then it'll give me an
Wow.
answer. Then I'll go deeper and I'll be like, for these specific products you said are top sellers, what are the sessions look like in what states or what areas? And I'll just go deep dive into the back end of Shopify. But that eventually, will stop unless like what Ryan said, it's weird you're not getting some conversions or whatever it may be. Then I'll start to look at the source, right? And that's Shopify, and I'll start to look at Google Analytics, and more often than not you could really work backwards with, even like if it says surfaces across Google in Shopify, you could see, and how come that isn't, that isn't a conversion on Google Ads, then I'll start going to a rabbit hole, Google Analytics. And I think you're right. I think one thing that I would look at is, the different sessions and traffics and visitors on Shopify, and see if they're, on the baseline, is there an increase of when I started running ads or when I really upped the budget for this? Where's that correlation? And if you could see that correlation, I'll tell a client, hey, I know I don't see specifically Google Ads conversions. And if I was to look in Google Analytics and Shopify, it's not going to say exactly it came from Google Ads, but it could say on Google Analytics, no data. And that could be somebody that used a VPN at work, even though they clicked your Google Ads, but the end result is them using a VPN, and then that's how they checked out. Or there may be incognito, or
That's a good
some
point.
other, some other way for them to kind of like block that chain of Google Ads clicking and then purchasing. So I think one thing for sure, I would look into Shopify and say, hey, there is an uptake in visitors, interactions, sessions, whatever it may be. And this is not a coincidence that we increased the budget or started this campaign on my side of Google Ads. I don't see conversions, but there could be something there, and just kind of use Shopify like that.
That's interesting. And I'm just in this client's account right now because I am curious and I want to take a look. And I'm looking at this month so far, right? And let me just find it again, month to date compared to previous month. We're up 26% in terms of sales. So potentially like best month yet.
Mhm.
And this product that I'm talking about, so it's up 127%
Yeah,
on last month. So we've had 34 sales this month, 15 the month prior. So that doesn't sound much. Okay, 34, great. And last month was 15. So it's only an additional, what, like 18 sales or something like that. But, is it
that's
like,
huge.
it's huge, right? And
Yeah, that's
it's not being
almost double,
attributed.
right?
Yeah, and it's not being it is. It's just over double actually, but it's
Yeah,
not being attributed in the campaign in Google Ads. So this is where I'm thinking, well, Google's really bad attribution. I should be looking in the back end more for my clients rather than Google Ads and saying, okay, well, this is why I'm seeing the figures don't lie in the back end. I've created this campaign. It's not getting any conversions in Google Ads, but we've got a 127% increase at the back end of Shopify. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. Because the month prior, we didn't have that campaign. I've created that campaign now for this specific product. I was seeing a lot of search terms in the standard shopping campaign citing people searching for this specific product.
hmm
And then I created a search campaign around it. All of a sudden, 127% increase this month so far, like one of the best months yet. So I don't know. But yeah, I
yeah. I would
think
definitely spot check on Google Analytics and look and see if any of the conversions, the attribution model, how it could be attributed
yeah,
to like none or like not set or like unknown. Maybe spot check one Shopify with that product sale, and go to the back end, because I've seen that a lot, especially if the sales cycle is longer or something. I don't know, maybe they're flirting in
maybe.
and out of that window. I'm not sure, but that I'm sure it happens where Google Ads is the catalyst for a conversion, but we're not getting PPC managers aren't getting credit for that.
I think over here in the UK as well, there's a lot of privacy laws, a lot of data sharing issues. We have GDPR. I don't think you guys have that over there yet, but
No.
a huge thing at the moment is consent mode version 2. So
Yeah.
in Europe, people are a little bit more like you have to accept the cookie banner to have that data on people. If someone says reject all the cookies and
Yeah.
says no, then we don't have that data. So you talking about seeing like unknown and this, that, and the other, it could be a lot of that. People say, well, no, I don't want to be tracked. And people are a lot more knowledgeable of it these days than they were previously. For me, I'm just like, yeah, whatever, just get off the screen. I want to do what I'm doing, right? But
Yeah.
some people might say, no, I don't want to be tracked. And that could be as a result of what I'm seeing. But yeah, I think there's some really good stuff in there. And can you do me a favor?
Mm.
This is such a weird episode because it's not really an episode, it's just you and me having a chat, but maybe this is what it should be going forward.
Yeah.
You mentioned about ChatGPT, you look at
Mm.
12 months, 9 months, 6 months, 3 months. Can you send me all those like prompts and where you get that data from and what you look at? Because I really want to run that for a couple of clients. I think it'd be
Yeah,
really good. Is that cool?
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
nice.
you have the so like I've heard that you can't do it on regular version, but I could just show you what I
Oh,
do on my premium version of how
I've
I
got,
do it.
yeah, I've got, what, are you premium Shopify or premium
Chat
ChatGPT?
GPT.
Oh, okay. You pay premium?
Yeah. I've
Is it
gotten
good?
rid of I yeah, dude, like yeah, man. It's basically I don't want to say what software out there that's just for Google Ads, but it's basically just
Oh,
that,
yeah.
you know.
But like,
Yes.
how much you pay? Well, I suppose that's a question for after the show
That's
in
20
terms of
bucks a
chat
month.
for Chat GPT Premium. All
Mhm.
right. Wow. I might have that's just we're going off topic again, but for me, that's the most surprising thing this year for me. And it's only just really happened in the last few weeks. I'm using Chat GPT so much more than I have ever done. Like reply to this email, rewrite this email, or rewrite
Yeah.
this message, or like, yeah, honestly, or like reply to this message, or what, like what's the other one I'm using? Condense this into like two
Yes.
paragraphs, or like, my partner just bought a book on Chat GPT and how to like get rich or whatever from it, and it's not bad, but the main thing is it's got some prompts in it. So it's like act as like a Google Ads account specialist. Tell me how to use target return on ad spend. Consider this in your analysis. And it's like a proper prompt, and you'll get like a huge, it's so good.
Yeah. So one thing I do want to say on the tail end of this episode about ChatGPT is, I have seen a lot of people try to sell these prompts and whatnot, but I think the biggest thing is providing a longer, just like how I would really want a question answered. You have to provide some, like tidbits of, hey, this is a Shopify account that sells leather goods, last year to date bestsellers. Extrapolate the data, like really a long winded kind of like question. And I think it does really well. But yeah, I use ChatGPT a lot, and I think it's something that, even for like, I just got a MRI on my knee, and it was all this crazy jargon. And I was like, tell me what's going on with my knee, and I'll just break it down, So yeah,
Wow.
I would just recommend anyone out there, not just Ryan, talk to ChatGPT with a little bit more background. A lot of the times, the reason why we're not getting the most out of ChatGPT is we're just being like, we think that it knows everything, which it doesn't. Give it a little background, and I think it'll work perfectly fine.
And it's not just for like that. Like you said, it's for personal as well. And yeah, be sure to send me all this stuff, man, because I am
Yeah.
interested. And I might even pay for premium because it's such a good thing and I'm using it so much more. But I was asking it like, okay, I want to lose some weight, I want to,
Mm.
and it gives you really good actionable steps to take in personal life, in professional life. It gave me some really good personal advice that I think you'd typically pay for,
Yeah.
so like it's really cool. I'm really these past few weeks surprised how much I've been using it. So if you can give me any additional to say, look at these trends and what are the best sellers and what are the patterns, I think that could really be cool.
Yeah, I just want to do this one say this one last thing. Another thing that I'm trying to do now with ChatGPT is I've been trying to see what the biggest hedge funds, what their biggest stakes are. And
Nice.
I'm just gonna copy.
Yeah,
gonna put money anyway. But yeah, that's
that's a good
ChatGPT is great.
idea.
I'll definitely send it to you for sure.
Yeah, thank you. All right, man. I'll wrap it up and say, well, this was a
Yeah.
very different episode of the PPC Cave. I don't know what's going to be aired or not, but the main thing is that there's a lot of value in this episode, I think. A lot of personal experience in this episode and maybe even some confidential data. So I'm hoping that Gene can, you can go through, maybe
Yeah, I'll edit it.
do a little bit more editing, for some more like sensitive stuff and this, that, and the other. But if you like what we have to say, then we do this every week. Although next week I believe Gene is not going to be here. I think it'll be me recording. So, or you'll see that in a couple of weeks. Nevertheless, we do this every week. We love what we do. We try to provide as much value for Google Ads as possible, whether it's automated, whether it's manual, whether it's bidding strategies, budgets, account structure, you name it, we try and cover it all. So we try and release every week on Mondays, Mountain Time, wherever the hell that is. Um, and we're everywhere. We're on Google. Were we on Google? We're not on Google. We're on Apple Podcast, Spotify. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We're everywhere. So, make sure you catch us. And, if you want to find Gene, he's at genevillanos.com. If you want to see me, I'm at ryanfentonppc.co.uk. And we'll be back next week, or I'll be back next week with another episode. So stay tuned. And as Gene says, if there's nothing else, I'll see you all later.